Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripasindubhyevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So welcome to our continued study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are up to Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 24. You all have that? This is in the chapter called Divinity and Divine Service. 1, 2, 24.
Are you going to read from
18? I'll read from 18, yeah. Because first we'll go like this. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'm going to just read the translations up to text 24 so you can remember the context. Starting with text 18. It's just the English translations, by the way. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. 19. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankerings, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. 20. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive, scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Thus, the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. 22. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to the personality of Godhead with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. 23. The transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance, and just for the material world's creation, maintenance, and destruction, he accepts the three qualitative forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit from Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness. Now we're up to text number 24. I'll just read through the Sanskrit. Partivad daruno dhumas tasmad agnistarimaya tamasastu rajas tasmat sattvam yad brahmadarshanam. So the translation, fire is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than the raw wood, and fire is still better, for by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness, sattva, is best, because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth. So if we just look at this a little bit, from the earth, partivat, From the earth, there is firewood, partivat, firewood from the earth, yeah, daruna, from the earth, and from that tasmat, excuse me, from the earth and firewood there is duma, smoke, and from that fire. There's three things here actually: firewood, smoke, and wood, smoke, and fire. And then from tasmit agni, and agni is said here, trai maya. Trai, the three, means denotes Vedic sacrifices. The three Riksamanya Veda, the Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, so this is just an example, and that similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness is best. Sattva is best because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth. So just as here, earth, smoke, and fire, so also there is these three modes of nature, but the goodness is best because one can realize the absolute truth. So here's Srila Prabhupada's purport to this. As explained above, this is in the previous verses. As explained above, one can get release from the conditioned life of material existence by devotional service to the personality of Godhead. It is further comprehended herein, that is, in this verse, that one has to rise to the platform of the mode of goodness, sattva, so that one can be eligible for the devotional service of the Lord. But if there are impediments on the progressive path, anyone, even from the platform of tamas, can gradually rise to the sattva platform by the expert direction of the spiritual master. Sincere candidates must, therefore, approach an expert spiritual master for such a progressive march, and the bona fide expert spiritual master is competent to direct a disciple from any stage of life, tamas, rajas, or sattva. It is a mistake, therefore, to consider that worship of any quality or any form of the Supreme Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is equally beneficial. Except Vishnu, all separated forms are manifested under the conditions of material energy, and therefore the forms of material energy cannot help anyone rise to the platform of sattva, which alone can liberate a person from material bondage. The uncivilized state of life, or the life of the lower animals, is controlled by the mode of tamas. The civilized life of man, with a passion for various types of material benefits, is the stage of rajas. The rajas stage of life gives a slight clue to the realization of the absolute truth in the form of fine sentiments in philosophy, art, and culture, with moral and ethical principles. But the mode of sattva is a still higher stage of the material quality, which actually helps one in realizing the absolute truth. In other words, there is a qualitative difference between the different kinds of worshiping methods, as well as the respective results derived from the predominating deities, namely Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So here, using this example of these three forms of first there's firewood, then there's smoke, and then there's fire. And he uses this example of the like a Vedic sacrifice. But he says, because he says here, through the Vedic sacrifices. Now our sacrifice is going to be a different kind of sacrifice than was done in these days, but and we'll see, we're going to also read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's take on this. He talks more about Vedic sacrifice. But you do get superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices gradually. You know, it happens. If you study sacrifice completely and understand it completely, then you'll come to this transcendental knowledge. But he says, so just as you can go up this way, so rajas is better than ignorance, and but goodness is better than both, because by goodness. And here in the purport, here we get directions. How can we actually come to direct perception of ourselves as we really are and by the Lord? It's by rising gradually to the sattva platform. So the process of devotional service and the sadhana we undergo and the regulative principles that we follow all do this. They bring us to the freedom from these, first of all, tamas and rajas, and then finally, actually, we don't stay even attached to sattva. The platform of devotional service is Vishuddha Sattva. It's purified goodness, because the material mode of goodness is bracketed, by passionate ignorance. But transcendence, pure goodness, Vishuddha Sattva, that's even going further than just the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is, art, literature. That's Shakespeare, all these things that we study for a higher civilization. But ultimately, that it doesn't liberate one. One has to go further. So how to do this? How to be able to recognize the modes of nature, see how they are in our minds and hearts, in even our condition. The first thing you do that I've seen when people become a devotee is clean their house. I once said, before I was a devotee, why are you so obsessed with cleanliness? This is to my wife. Why are you obsessed with cleanliness? Dirt's God too. So this is so the first thing that you do when you get in touch with Krishna consciousness, start to clean your house. Just the surroundings. If the surroundings are actually, you get all the, and you start the tamas stuff, our four regulative principles are precisely no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling. These are the things that eliminate tamas and rajas. And as I really like to emphasize, these principles, the four regular principles, are not merely moral principles, because we tend to think of them like that, as moral principles by habit. And they are that, but there's something more. They're symptoms of ignorance. So that tamas and rajas, when you're those four regular principles, they are principles of knowledge. Pratyaksha avagamam dharmam, it gives pratyaksha, direct perception. Prati aksha is eyes, so pratyaksha means just in front of the eyes, you can see yourself, and in the same way you can start to perceive God. And it's a matter of direct perception. And because there's a standard way of doing it, a process you undergo with directions how to do it, Prabhupada therefore uses this word science, the science of self-realization. It's not just theoretical, but practical. That's the meaning of science. You can do things. And the world needs to know this, because you can see what our civilization is like, where we've got overwhelmed with rajas and tamas. The result of the mode of passion in the Bhagavad Gita is misery. That's what happens. That's scientific knowledge. If you standard of advancement of the standard of mode of passion, then there's misery. What do you do when you become misery and you don't know anything about the mode of goodness? Tamas. You start to sedate yourself. You go to the drugs and things like that. So this is what happens, and this is look. Just think of the modes of nature. Look at the state of our advanced Western civilization, and you can see what is happening. And hardly anyone is teaching sattva. Not only it'll clear up everything. You want to get rid of air pollution? Try sattva. You want to get rid of global warming? Try sattva. All these things will work. And also, the symptom of sattva, you're happy. And that's just material happiness. And then you can go on from that platform to this Vishuddha sattva. So, Prabhupada says here, it is a mistake to consider that worship of any quality or any form of the Supreme Personality Godhead is equal beneficial. Because the forms of Brahma and Shiva, these are both in charge of passion and ignorance, they are not equally beneficial. Except Vishnu, all separated forms are manifested under the conditions of material energy. And therefore, all forms of material energy cannot help anyone to rise to the position of sattva, which alone can liberate a person from material bondage. And then he goes on to tell us that animals, the lower uncivilized state of life, or the life of the lower animals, is controlled by the mode of tamas. Then when you get the development of civilization, with the passion for various types of material benefits, this is rajas. And he says here, the rajas stage gives a slight clue, notice the word slight, to the realization of the absolute truth in the form of fine sentiments in philosophy, art, and culture with moral and ethical principles. And that's as far as most people know. And that's the best you could get from some university education at the present time. You have to remember that education first, even in the West, where way to develop. What are graduation robes, for example? They're monk's gowns because education was all originally for becoming to this higher stage, Uh, but we've gotten rid of all that, and the monks' gowns are just even in my own lifetime, I've seen the decline of educational institutions more and more. What they really want to do is to produce things that'll get money, and that's what it's about. That's success in money. And they want their students to be successful because then when they start making money, they'll give big donations to the college or university they graduated from. This is how it goes. This is this. But so nobody knows really except how do you go higher, anything higher, to just this sattva. It's really not to be found. Now we also have here a slightly different translation by Bhanu Swami. Remember, Bhanu Swami translates these. Oh, here we have it. Yeah, based on Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Smoke is superior to dull wood, and fire, sacred to the Vedas, is superior to smoke. As you can see, this little different. Similarly, rajas is superior to tamas, and sattva is superior to rajas, since it is favorable for realizing the Lord. So this is the way Bhanu Swami does this. So here, what did I do? So here he says here in the, so this is based on the commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Right? So tamas, rajas, and sattva have the respective qualities of obscuring, agitating, and revealing knowledge. So here he analyzes here these three modes, right? Tamas, ignorance obscures knowledge. Sattva agitates, agitates knowledge, stirs it all up. It's not the same 2 days in a row. It's always changing. The knowledge, if you see the knowledge, it's as St. Paul said, it's through a glass darkly, or it's a warped lens or something like that. Obscuring, agitating, and revealing. This is sattva. Of these three material modes, sattva is the best because it is not unfavorable for shuddha sattva, pure goodness. Either we call the transcendental state shuddha sattva, or for a little more emphasis, vishuddha sattva. This V is in Sanskrit a kind of all-purpose intensifier. So vishuddha sattva. So Prabhupada, pure goodness or purified goodness, or like that. And he says this is shown through an example. So now the example here is superior to wood is smoke. So you get these three things. So first you start with wood, which is devoid of the quality of action and unable to reveal its nature, is smoke. Now, smoke has an active nature. So this is like the mode of passion. Right? It has an active nature. Superior to smoke, however, is fire, which has the qualities of action and revelation. That is, even in the mundane, you can see things. It is called Trayimaya, related to the Vedas, because it is used in rituals mentioned in the Vedas. Trayi here denotes, Trayi means the three, triple, threefold. So it's also a name for Vedic sacrifice because the sacrifices are really described in the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Yajur Veda. I mean, the Rig Veda, there's 10 books and it has what they call the hymns, just the mantras that you chant. The Sama Veda has those, plus it has tunes you sing it with. And the Ayurveda gives directions for yajna, for fire sacrifices and things like that. The fourth Veda, the Atharva Veda, people mostly say it has a lot of spells to ward off demons and things like that, and also mostly of the things that are already in the other Vedas. So this Trayi, the three, or the threefold, the triple, like in the Bhagavatam, Trayi Gatra, O personified Vedic knowledge. Krishna is addressed that way, Bhagavatam 4:746, Trayi Gatra. Gatra means having a body, the body made of three things, triple body. And then, where does he say in here? From his purport, there's more to it down there, isn't it? Yeah, keep going. So he translates this sattva sanjayate jnanam rajaso lubha evacha pramada mohino pramada moho tamaso bhavato jnanam evacha. Knowledge arises from sattva. From sattva sanjayate jnanam, from sattva, knowledge arises. Rajaso lobha evacha. And then from rajas, similarly, lobha, greed, avarice. And then from tamasa, pramada, mohano, and agyana. See the bhavato agyanam evacha. So pramada, confusion or inattention. Here it's inattention. Confusion is moha. And then agyana is ignorance. This comes from tamaha. If you want to know the three modes of nature, this is the most empirical part of the Gita. You can see them. Once you learn to look at the world and the people in it through the three modes of nature, you can see it everywhere. It's really very applicable. So this, so sattva is superior because it gives a vision of Brahman. Then he quotes this: "It," which means sattva here, is not obstructive to Shuddha sattva. It doesn't. The others block Shuddha sattva, but at least the material mode of goodness does not obstruct pure goodness and does not cover it. It does not interfere with seeing Brahman. It is thus an assistant in spiritual life. That's very nice. That Shuddha sattva and sattva, so that there's the Vishuddha sattva and that just sattva, because a lot of times if you're living a regular life, a lot of part of what you have to do is not directly involved with devotional service, but that everything else should be sattvic as much as possible. Hard to do in America, but anyway. So he says here that sattva is an assistant in spiritual life. That's what the mode of goodness is for. He says, without bhakti, however, seeing the Lord or even impersonal Brahman is impossible. It's an interesting thing to say. And he says this is confirmed later in the Bhagavatam. He goes on, it is said of the Lord's form, Anando Brahmano Rupam, the supreme form, the supreme Lord, has a form of bliss. The gunas of Maya, tamas, rajas, and sattva, cannot act independently of him. And then he quotes from Bhagavatam 2:747. Maya parayti abhimukhe cha vilajamana. Maya flees from the Lord being ashamed. You can read Prabhupada's translation of this also. Bhagavatam 2:747. Thus it is by the will of the Lord, by his touch alone, that Ananda becomes qualified by agitation in the form of Brahma. By qualified means limited. That Ananda is our natural state, but qualified by agitation in the form of Brahma. Being qualified by revelation, Ananda becomes Vishnu. These are the three deities in charge of the gunas. Brahma's in charge of the mode of passion, Vishnu in charge of the mode of goodness. He personally takes charge of the mode of goodness. And so if it's this Ananda qualified by revelation becomes Vishnu, and being qualified with obscuration, is that even an English word? Anyway, qualified with obscuration, being obscured or covered, Ananda becomes Shiva. Since there is no damage when Ananda is combined with revelation, sattva, Vishnu is worthy of worship. Because now he goes back to this basic example. Because one can realize fire through wood, but not through smoke, tamas should be considered superior to rajas. Because, yeah, okay, here's a consideration. In deep sleep, tamas, one has realization of oneness with Atma. There are statements like that. In deep dreamless sleep, this is there's no dreaming or anything. I wake up, I've slept well. That means there's some touch there with spirit. Thus, now he's explaining why he brings this up. Some persons argue that between Brahma and Shiva is better. So if you want to know where they get that idea from. So, do I have this here where he says, Asango hi ayam purushaha?
Yes, oh, there's more.
Yeah, there is more. Okay, I thought so. Okay, I knew. Thank you. These three are equal, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, in that they are all avatars of the Lord. They are unequal in that Vishnu is not covered by the gunas, whereas Brahma and Shiva are. So equal in one sense, unequal in another. This is how the contrary statements a difference and non-difference of the Puranas can be harmonized. So they're just two different ways of talking about them, right? They're same, equal as they're all avatars, guna avatars, but unequal in that Vishnu has got this other feature. He's not covered by the gunas, Brahman, Shiva, and all. And then he comes to this interesting statement. The Shruti says, Asango hyayam purushaha. The Atma is not contaminated by the gunas. This is from the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishads. Now, Prabhupada has quoted this a number of times. I've pulled it out where it is, but let's go through and then we'll go back to it. Though Paramatma and Jivatma are by their constitution devoid of the gunas, right? Both by their nature, Paramatma and Jivatma, qualitatively the same, are devoid of the gunas because Paramatma is the Supreme Lord, an ocean of chit. Because he is independent in his actions, he remains Admarama, self-enjoying, not subject to birth in the world without diminution of his knowledge of himself, even though by his will he contacts the gunas and thus is in possession of the effects of the gunas, such as anger. However, the jiva, because he is only a particle of chit, 1/10,000th the tip of a hair in size, right? We've got a measurement. 1/4 of an angstrom unit, as Sariputta once told me. that's what 1/4. That's what the particle is. 1/10,000th the tip of a hair in size. If you take a human hair and you divide it, that's because that's the size of the particle. The particle, 1/4 of an angstrom unit. That's how big a jiva is, spirit soul. However, the jiva, because he is only a particle of chit, having very little ability of knowledge, and because he is controlled by the Lord and not independent, and has very little power, he loses his knowledge of his real nature and takes birth in this world by contacting the gunas where the gunas act upon him. So anyway, he is made this point here about, it quotes the Vedic junction. The Shrutis say, Asango Hayam Purushaha. This is from the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad. And so Prabhupada quotes this, he calls it Vedic injunction, about 36 times in his books and classes. Actually, it shows up quite a bit if you just type it, the database. For example, in his commentary to Bhagavatam 7.3, 15 to 60, he says, and this is typical of the way he uses it, the living entity can live merely by his own power, without the help of skin, marrow, bone, blood, and so on, because it is said, Asango hyayam purushaha, the living entity has nothing to do with the material covering. So that's the way Prabhupada takes this here. So those are the considerations here. Oh, how much time do we have? Okay. Again, if we go back, remember here's these two translations. The transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance. This is Prabhupada's purport here. No, I'm reading, I'm sorry, the wrong one. Here we go. Where is it? I got all these. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Firewood, Partivat, yeah. Firewood is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than raw wood, and fire is still better, for by fire we can derive the benefit of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness is best because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth. So that's Prabhupada's translation here. And yeah, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, smoke is superior to dull wood, and fire sacred to the Vedas. This Trayimaya, this way he is superior to smoke. Similarly, rajas is superior to tamas, and sattva is superior to rajas, since it is favorable for realizing the Lord. It gives Brahma Darshana. In the mode of goodness, you can start to realize the Lord, a vision of Brahman. And then, of course, Brahman, Paramatman, and Bhagavan, those three uh, ways the Lord becomes manifested. Okay. Let's see if there's any questions, comments, confusions.
Thank you for that class. And if anybody on Zoom has a question or comment, you can go ahead and use the raise hand feature or type into the chat box that you have a comment or question. You're also welcome just to post your question there. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and post your question into the chat box there on the comment section. And thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Vijay Dwaita Swami, for being in our local studio audience this time.
The live studio
even though
audience.
he's off screen, but we'll see him. And Tulsi Priya has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Tulsi Priya.
Jai Gurudev, accept my obeisances.
Hare Krishna. Nice to see you in Orissa, huh?
Yeah, that's Monarch. I love that place. So my question, it's not so much a question, it's a kind of a comment, but maybe a question is in there. The idea of smoke being better than wood, smoke being better than wood. I happen to be on the side of Lord Shiva being better than Lord Brahma, but another thing about that is when you're trying to make a fire, you know, and you're rubbing sticks together or whatever, usually you wind up with smoke before you get fire, right? So
I'm sorry, yours a little.
Please repeat that.
Please repeat a little slower.
when you're trying to make a fire by rubbing sticks together, usually you get smoke before you get the fire. So when you were talking about the mode of passion, I think the word you use is that it's a hint, a slight hint of something. I can't remember the rest of it, but in the same way, wouldn't the mode of passion be similar to smoke in that it's a slight hint of the fire? You know that fire is coming. If you I guess if you do the mode of passion right, then eventually you wind up in goodness, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
That's why when it says the smoke is superior to fire, because it's tells something is coming anyway.
Wait, smoke, you mean superior to wood, right?
Yeah, compared to wood.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Tulsi Priya. And while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, I have a question about sattva being a mode that's helpful for devotional service.
Except for book distribution.
Except for book distribution. Well, that kind of falls into a question I have of oftentimes we're told, you know, to stay busy, right? To stay busy in devotional service. And in my experience, sometimes I feel like I can overload the busyness, and it seems more like the mode of passion. And I feel that way because after being overloaded, sometimes I feel like I need a little tamas to recuperate. And yeah, just kind of bringing that up of like, how do you find that balance between feeling that, because there's always more to do, like there's
Yeah,
always
sure,
unlimited service to be done. Could you
sure.
speak to that a little bit?
To engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses may look like passion. And I guess in the beginning, you may take some things that have been developed for sense gratification, like selling things, for example, or whatever it may be. But because you're engaged in the service of the Lord, whatever passion is there, and if you really are in the service of the Lord, like for example, if you are like going out and doing lots of book distribution just so you can be praised by others, or just so you can get rewarded in some way, and you get that free trip to Vrindavan for, you know, that's not so good as where you just do it for the sake of satisfying Krishna and the spiritual master and for helping other people. So the same activity, which may really look, Prabhupada even in his preface, I think, of the Bhagavatam, it looks to other people that we have taken up we are the work of a busy person. We are going to the booksellers. We are looking at paper. We are going to the bookbinders, trying to make all these books, and people think you just become another guy doing hard work, But actually, this is for the service of Krishna, and if it pleases Krishna, then it's, even though it looks like it's the modes of nature, it's unaffected in that way.
Thank you. So I guess I would need to check my motivation. For those
Yeah, the
things.
motivation is the thing. And then, you have to take care of your instruments, if you have a car and you don't change the oil every so often, we have to, change our oil. We have to go sleep, stay in good repair, keep the brain functioning, and and if it's done to keep the body in good shape for Krishna service, it's not in the modes, even though you're using things like that. The interesting thing about prasadam is you take something that's the most basic animal function, practically, is eating, and you can purify that. And that's quite something. Who was it that said to me when I told everybody? I told him that everything that we do is for Krishna. He said, "How do you eat?"
Thank you. That was helpful. And Tulsi Priya says, obeisances to Mother Sadamani and His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj. And she has another question. So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Again, my question is about the mode of goodness, and I seem to recall, it's been a while since I've had to think about this, but when you were talking about the part where goodness does not interfere with Vishuddha Sattva, Sattva does not interfere with Vishuddha Sattva. But I remember back in the early days, I would hear things like, if somebody is in the mode of goodness, in terms of preaching to people, if somebody's in the mode of goodness, they become proud, and then they're maybe perhaps less likely to take to devotional service. So is this Sattva not interfering with Vishuddha only when somebody is already in devotional service, or?
Well, it's not that they become proud, it's they become happy. Just material sattva can make you satisfied and happy. You're not, the motive of passion leads to suffering, but so sattva people are happy, and I mean, if they look a little deeper, they might see that there's some problems there and they might be concerned about it. But that's what that is about. That people that are already in the mode of goodness, they're kind of satisfied and they think they're advancing and things like that. But they also have some blinders on. You know, yeah, there's a little ignorance that lets them understand, you know, not understand the fact of and they think, yeah, you know, I've done something for humanity. I've done good things for people, and they just you know, feel like they've done something worthwhile, and they have actually, you know, but it's not the best thing. You like, you know, people who go out and into dangerous places and cure the sick and or fight fires, you know, when they're just to save people, you know, that kind of thing, where you work for humanity. Uh, you can be satisfied, but if you really want to help humanity, what about all these people? So you work all this while to save people from disease. Guess what? You saved them, and they die later on. You know? Why are you saving them then? You know. So the best way to convince those people to say, yeah, but this is you. Ultimately, all you do is put you know, a little patch on the wound, but it's still not healed. I think that's the best response for that kind of a complacency or feeling good about yourself.
Brief follow-up question.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
if is there such a
can-
thing as is everybody always a mix or in different proportions of the three modes, or is there such a thing as materially somebody? I guess no, that would be Vishuddha if they had only goodness and no passion or ignorance, right?
Yeah, sometimes you know, our standard of advancement is the mode of passion. And so people get that way. The result of the mode of passion is misery. How do most people deal with this misery? They go to the mode of ignorance. And that's really modern civilization. There is really not much training in sattva guna, just being good. You know, it's actually quite rare in this way. I remember once going to a Catholic university, and the faculty were, and a lot of the you know the faculty and a lot of the students. It was a seminary too that went to this university where a lot of them were priests, and you know, and they were very frustrated with being in the mode of goodness. They wanted to be able to get out. If I could just go out once in a while on a date, I could, you know. And you could see they weren't going to last, you know, unfortunately.
Thank you for your question, Silsi Priya.
Thank
And
you.
Shakti has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, like an amazing class. I was wondering if you knew the names of the gopis of Balaram.
His most dear girlfriend is, what is one? Just flew out of my head. Um, um, darn. Yeah, I know the one that's considered to be his most dear girlfriend. It'll come to me in a minute. I'm sorry, I've got a slow download on my brain in my old age, so it takes a while. But I do know some of the gopis, at least that one, of of uh, of Balaram, and that gopi also has an sort of expansion in Krishna Lila too. By the way,
Krishna Chaitanya says, are you referring to Revati?
no, well that's one. That's not a girlfriend. That's a wife. Yes. He also has his own gopis, and Purnananda is her name. Purnananda with a long A. Purnananda is Balaram's most dear girlfriend, and that's in Vrindavan. He has his own gopis. I can show it, download it. Hey.
Thank you for your question, Shakti. And your wife has her hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Melissa Domini.
Interesting statement there.
Trying to do it.
Oh, there we go. Hey, you
Yeah, I
came
did it. Making Corella chips at the same time.
up.
My experience with the very few times that I've run into people that are predominantly in the mode of goodness, the way to interest them in Krishna consciousness, they're actually interested in the philosophy, in the pastimes, the chanting, you know, not so much, oh, the material world is so horrible, because they don't experience that so much, but it's all the positive stuff, you know. Anyway, that's been my experience.
Good. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Good point. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a few questions in the chat box. Bhakti Impala says, Hare Krishna, interesting class. Thanks. Can Gurudev please comment on what it means that Paramatma is in possession of ellipses, anger?
Paramatma's possession of what?
Anger.
Yes,
It said so in the Vishwanath Chakravarti purport,
oh, yeah. Okay.
and I didn't understand at all.
Yeah. Let me go back to it.
We'll look it up.
Look at the knowledge means how to look it up. That's what I told me in graduate school. Knowledge means knowing how to look it up. Let's see where was that?
I think it's somewhere towards the end, maybe third paragraph up. Or something.
Yeah, it was in Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Let me find it. Oh, I say when he this is when he comes in, when the Paramatma has these features of the guna avatars. They are unequal in that Vishnu is not covered. They are equal in that they are all avatars of the Lord. They are unequal in that Vishnu is not covered by the gunas, where Brahma and Shiva are. But he says, about Shiva, because some people argue that Shiva is better because Brahma is like fire realized through smoke, but tamas is because one can realize fire through wood, just wood itself, but not through smoke. Tamas should be considered superior to rajas. In deep sleep, tamas, one has realization of oneness with Atma. Thus, some people argue between Brahma and Shiva. Shiva is better. These are guna avatars. They're in charge of them. So there's a little bit of generally, our understanding is that really, you do best for transcendence, the mode of goodness, by worshiping Vishnu, because although Shiva and Brahma, for us Brahma is better because we're the Brahma Sampradaya, and he's supposedly in charge of the mode of passion because he's the creator, and he's all these things. And sometimes he runs into some problems with even that. And But then we all also have Lord Shiva has another. There's another Vaishnava Sampradaya that are they're not Shaivites, but it's the what is it? What do they call it? The something. God, I just flew out of my
Rudra
head.
Sampradaya?
Rudra Sampradaya. Yeah, we usually call it the Rudra. Another name for Shiva is Rudra, which means howler. But anyway, yeah, the Rudra Sampradaya. There's a so they can act like, even though they're in charge of those modes, they can act as also as pure devotees. And but we realize some of the problems that Brahma ran into, different places. Yeah.
Okay,
Anything
and
else?
yes, Maharidi Prabhu, he asked, oh, thank you, Bhakti Phala. Thanks for your question. Maharani Prabhu asks, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I wonder about the practical implementation of knowledge of the modes of nature. While reading Mahabharata, it seems that they were aware how modes work, while at the same time, there is not much information on the theory of the modes. Looks like their knowledge of the modes was part of their lifestyle. If this is correct, shall we use the knowledge of the modes to make more lifestyle changes in modern society? Like, for example, promote meditation and healthy eating to enable more people to accept spiritual life.
I would think that we should concentrate on the spiritual life because that's our specialty. And we hope that some other people will work on the mode of goodness. That's generally because really the people who actually know about transcendence are few in number. And I think that there will be a lot of people who have come into contact with Krishna consciousness, don't go the whole way, but learn something from it that helps them. I mean, I think it's a when I was a devotee, became a devotee, and this is in the early 70s. Tell people I was a vegetarian, they thought I was going to die. It was my mother, actually, who was a registered nurse. Well, if you're not going to eat meat, at least give it to the children. I had a child at that. At least give it to the children, because they thought they needed it for then, 10 years later says, oh, your diet is so healthy. Things have changed, that 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 we think that one of the things that's really kind of astonishing is to learn. Prabhupada says one of his purports that all the living beings are praja, and therefore they should be protected by the king. And I thought, my God, this means animals have civil rights. That's not such a strange idea anymore. Cow protection itself, all these things. So I think it's bleeding out. And that some people who have practiced Krishna consciousness, because I think there are more people who have left the movement than have stayed in it. Or some people go in and out. But anyway, but those people, they'll bring something with them. And so I think gradually you'll see an increase in the mode of goodness too. Or you'll see either increase in goodness and ignorance and less and less passion. That seems to be what's happening in some ways.
And Tulsi Priya added a comment. She said, if you focus on transcendence over goodness, it's like you aim for the moon and you'll land among the stars, unless you actually reach the moon.
Yeah, that's right. Anything else?
Just a few comments. Shaila Vasani, Devidasi says, wonderful class. And Mandaleshwari says, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru and Gauranga. Thank you so much. Very interesting subject. And Vijay Krishna Prabhu, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, Shraddha Devi Mataji, thank you for your service and my obeisances, Maharaj. My question is related to the following passage. Without bhakti, however, seeing the Lord or even impersonal Brahman is impossible. My question is it that it is correct to say that people who walk around in this material world being physically blind, they are physically blind because the bhakti inside their hearts is absent? Because God
Physically
is
blind?
physically absent, non-existent. Because God is everything, He is everywhere the whole time. And for us to see Him in accordance with this sentence, we need bhakti. So is it that the blind people in this material world, physically blind, they cannot see because of bhakti being non-existent in their hearts?
If you're talking about people who actually have lost their material vision, sometimes there are people who are blind who are quite have a lot of bhakti. So on the one hand, if you
Yes,
mean
that is why I'm asking this question.
So material blindness is another thing that doesn't have much to do with bhakti or not having bhakti, because you can have bhakti and still be physically blind, but Krishna takes care of you somehow or another, and makes an arrangement that even though those things may happen, remember when people get quite old, they tend to lose their sight anyway. That's one of the failing senses, and that's one of them. But people who are physically able to see so many things, they can't see. There's 330 million devas. They can't see them. The devas are like the nervous system of the universe. They're all over the place. They're doing things all the time. They can't see them. Prabhupada once said when he gave a lecture early on in Boston, they had rented a church. It was a cold day. There was hardly anybody there when Prabhupada gave his lecture, and he gave this brilliant lecture that people, all the devotees who were present, found amazing. And somebody said to him afterwards, "Prabhupada, you gave such a wonderful lecture and there was nobody there." And he just said, "So, you didn't see Narada Muni?" This is the story that was told to me. So we can't see, there's a lot we don't see. We think we've got perfect sight, but there's a lot we don't see. And sometimes, who's in control of our senses anyway? The devas anyway, and they're under Krishna's control. So the on and off switches are really there. So sometimes you can have a vision that of things that are subtle that people can't see, but sometimes you can.
So what you are saying that maybe I am in the presence of a physically blind person, but still he may be a pure devotee.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Thank you,
right.
Maharaj. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bilva Mangala Thakur is Jai Dwaita Swami, who's off camera, says that he would talk about Bilva Mangala Thakur, who was physically blind and a pure devotee.
He was the devotee who removed his eyes from his head because of being involved with a prostitute. That is the pastime?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, thank you very much. Jai Advaita Maharaj, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
I've forgotten about him. Yeah.
You're welcome.
And I think we will end here for today. Adi Devi says, Hari Krishna Gurudev, please in my humble obeisances with a prayer hands emoticon.
Okay. Here's my emoticon. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai. Jai
Jai.
Gurudev.
Stay tuned. Next week, we'll continue.
Yes, I'll be here.
Next
Wonderful
installment.
session. Thank you very much.